Well, what I thought about was that, of course, what's it called, suits, and then legal suits also rely heavily on precedents or case studies, and as it were, there are a number of case studies that came to my mind, and all the case studies that came to my mind affirms Manche's right as a person who is supposed to actually receive compensation for that particular, for the sampled piece.
Tell us more.
Of course, the recording, the sound recording generally, is for Obrafuor Execution Entertainment. But it wasn't the entire song that was sampled. There was just a particular piece of it that was sampled. That piece of it, Manche claims that he did not give it to Obrafuor. He had given it to, he had uttered it, right, composed it, and given it to Hammer as a producer. And then Hammer used it in the song. So in that particular instance, there was not even an arrangement between him and Obrafuor. He had given it to Hammer. Now in this particular instance, whether he was paid, whether he had kept quiet all this while or not, if you look at all the case studies that had happened on similar issues, it confirms that the Manche is the one that's duly, that's the rightful claimant to the compensation that's supposed to come. Now, these are okay, so two case studies. One is the Cisco, Ricky Martin, Desmond Child's versus Desmond Child. What was that issue? You remember the tongue song?
Yeah.
So there was a part that he says, living la vida loca. So when he said that, in actual fact, that material living la vida loca was somebody's composition.
Yeah.
It was in Ricky Martin's song, living la vida loca. Now, when he was in Ricky Martin's song, he was sued. When he sued, when you follow it, I put out an article on it, I think yesterday. The compensation went to the composer, not Ricky Martin. The composer is called Desmond Child. It went to him because he composed that piece. And so he was a rightful claimant to it. Then there's another matter, which was a very big issue. Taylor Swift versus Big Time Machine. So again, just like in Obrafuor Manche's case, Obrafuor owns the master rights.
Yeah.
In her case as well, she put out an album. The record label was sold to Scooter Brown. When it was sold to Scooter Brown, she didn't like the arrangement, and then she wanted out. The record label didn't want to allow her. They didn't want to. They gave her a very high, fees for her to pay to be able to buy out her album. She couldn't. However, because she wrote and composed her albums without everybody else, and she owns the publishing rights or the compositional right of that particular album. What did she do? Because the right is hers and she could do anything with it, she re-released the album differently because whatever she wrote is hers.
Yeah.
Even though the master of the original album was owned by the record label, and in that instance, when she wanted to re-release the original album, the record label stopped her. What did she do? She took the composition and re-recorded it because it is hers. So two of these cases further affirms the fact that that publishing of that sampled piece is for Manche. And of course, when he tweeted, I saw a lot of people weighing on him, and I was like, no. I realized a lot of people, again, also because thought leadership of industry is less, and also often because you have a lot of ignorant people speaking and commenting on industrial matters across. We're bound to elicit this sort of emotions. But when you come down to it, you look at all the various case studies, whether Manche had sat down all these years and not spoken about anything or not, whether he was paid or not, there was an inherent publishing right in whatever he composed.
Okay.
And since that particular part was what was sampled, the compensation was solely his. In actual fact, in the Desmond Child's Cisco case study, the label couldn't. It was his publishers and the composer's legal team that actually reached out for compensation. Ricky Martin couldn't have.
Yeah.
The label that released Ricky Martin's song that owned the master rights couldn't have. So unless Manche actually waves it off and says, okay, well, I'm giving Obrafuor permission, in actual fact, following all the case studies, Obrafuor didn't have any right whatsoever to actually seek for compensation on his own.
He didn't have a right.
He didn't.
Not at all.
Take a look at all the case studies.
Just to add on,
He didn't.
Go back and check Manche's tweets.
Yeah.
This case came up last year. He actually made an effort to reach out to Hammer. Yes. So he heard it first and he was like, yo, bros, this is what is happening. What do we do about this? Let's
He
move
actually brought it down.
Yeah, let's move as a team and get this done. Nobody mind that, man. Then Obrafuor moves in to do this. Yo,
I think he felt betrayed by the fact that even though he was the one to sound the alarm, and then try to get them to come together.
He could have just done what Obrafuor did last year by himself. He needed not to consult nobody.
He would have been right.
And he would have had the right to go ahead and
he didn't need to speak to Hamad, he didn't need to speak to Obrafuor. This is his. But he actually contacted these two individuals. And now, Obrafuor, if you want to take a case, you just go behind Manchester and do that. No.
You don't do that.
I think he felt betrayed by the fact that Obrafuor went in to try to register the song, which is not bad anyway.
Yeah. Would he have done that because he felt the obligation, because the work doesn't stand on its own? It's involved in something. So for him to want to take a step, he needed to consult with. Probably that's why he made the move to get in touch with them before.
So on his own, he could not have filed a lawsuit. Let's bring it. He could have just for that line.
For all the case studies that has happened, that provides precedence for this particular case. He could have. I cited the Desmond Charles issue. In the Desmond Charles incident, he, not Ricky Martin, not the record label that owned the masters, actually filed.
What he's saying actually is that if there's an author of the word Killer Cat, Manchester will not even get the money. It will go to the author.
Obviously throws a spotlight on some of the structural problems we've had as an industry. And of course, I mean, in the ways that it's been done in the more matured markets, it's been done through the existence of well-structured units of industry. You know, so the talents that are here, just like the talents that are abroad, often do not know everything. And in the way talents sometimes, excuse me.
Sorry.
In the way sometimes talents are wired, like Bulldog is saying, they approach it from the passion and the energy. It is the well-structured units of the industry that they get sucked up into that begins to whip them into line. So for instance, a Papi who is sitting down here, if he was in the US, that has been signed by the particular label. By the time he will go through the label system, work with their A&R, when it's done with the A&R and the whole production creative process, and they're about releasing, work with the marketing team in terms of how they go about releasing it, how they go on tour and everything else, work with the finance team in terms of how they actively budget for each and every cost line item, move from there, work with the legal team to ensure that every clearance is made and all of these things. By the time he's done with that process, practically and from an experiential perspective, the artist would have learned a thing or two, you know, which is that. So the basis of it is, I think going forward, we need a lot more well-structured units of industry. That's one of the ways that we can be able to base some of these things. But this is a major learning, and that's where, for instance, I have to slightly disagree with our senior when he says that this issue should be discussed in the backgrounds. I think that because the thought leadership of industry is zero and less, when these things come, it affords us the opportunity to inform industry and create the narratives that would enable industry. It's very important, you know. And this is where, for instance, I mostly always call on us as media, for instance, to do better. If you see the kind of conversation we're having, we're delving into sometimes academic part, the legal part, looking to case studies and everything, and informing people. Trust me, you go on certain platforms that will discuss on this issue, either from yesterday throughout the weekend. It's a sensational takes. Everybody's looking for that pundit who shouts loud, who creates the most sensational headlines, who would accuse somebody and accuse anybody, and just to get the headlines. You know, and that's where we need to do it, because as part of the mix, you know, as part of the mix, we have also a responsibility as part of the mix to be able to play our part, if we understand our development, play our part to help to enable this space, knowing fully well that from a 360 perspective, it could impact on us. So this is a very good case study that I think that we should discuss publicly. It provides some major learnings and lessons for industry. Yes, of course, intellectually. And then it gives us an opportunity to look into some of the intellectual parts of industry. But most importantly, we should be looking forward to the outcome of it, so that could also guide industry. But most importantly, all of us need to be able to align and be able to start to do things right. To the talent, to the business manager of the talent, to the manager and everybody. We need to understand that the responsibility to create that well-structured unit of industry starts with us. before everybody else. It starts with us. I give an example to everybody, like Bulldog is talking about, Abraham. I also started off as a creative. We all started off as a creative. But in the last 5 years, I was nothing like it. I was working in the creative industry, but I was working in management. I was doing finance. You were doing because it had become important for you to do that to ensure the sustainability of whatever you're doing. So for everybody else, it's either your team upgrade, you get them to upgrade, or you fire them and move on to find somebody that can do that if you want to.
Yeah.
We've got, other than that, we risk talents coming and going quickly. Of course, talents come and go. They will stay on top forever. But the pace at which they come and go quickly, it's disturbing and worrying.
Yeah.
But part of how we can stem this tide is ensuring that on our own, as everybody that's in the chain, making sure that we are well structured from our mindset, from the way we approach the business and everything else. And not obviously maybe in top of the school, off air, Anita has been speaking about something.
Yeah.
Almost all the creative schools that are in Ghana, there's a need for us to add the entrepreneurship and the business or commercial part of it to the training. Yeah. Most of us that went to communication school, we come out from communication school just trying to be communicators, journalists, public relations person, or anything like that. You go to NAFTI, it's the same. You go to the graphic design unit of KNUST, it's the same. You come out because primarily you have to be trained to be a creative. But if there's this other part that is brought in to us, the business part of it, it would help to begin to realign everybody's mindset so that by the time you are done from school and you are in industry, you would have that analytical mindset to be able to structure yourself, structure the media business that you started with, and then you move on from there.